Well, let's get into it. We're now in session 2 for me. I hope this has been a good day for you. I know it has been for me. I got to attend 2 workshops this morning that were incredibly helpful and insightful. And for me, I want to really spend the bulk of our time here on the practical end of things, of how we can really push the needle on family ministry. The preparation for this has been particularly helpful to me because it's helped me clarify thoughts that I haven't even shared with my own staff yet. Part of that is I've been in a lead pastor role for, 6-7 months now, and it's been a sprint, and I'm just kind of settling into some of the priorities that have been in my own life and ministry, and so we're getting there. So this has been helpful for me. So by way of review, there's 3 affirmations that were critical for family ministry. The first is that most parents want to be better parents. Yes, that's our starting point. And also, most parents don't know how to be better parents. This opens a tremendous window of opportunity for us as church and ministry leaders. That if that desire is already there, what would it look like if we came up and said, hey, we can help. We can get behind you. We can give you resources that can help you be a better parent. So when you start talking with churches and ministry leaders about how to do family ministry, the excuses start flying fast and furious. Okay, I'm going to share 3 excuses that are my favorites. There's a whole host of others. You could probably find your own. Here are some of the excuses. The first one is this. We already tried and it doesn't work. We've done family ministry. It didn't go anywhere. Excuse number 2. We don't have the time. We've got a lot of things. You know, if you work in a church or parachurch or ministry of another kind, you know there's certain expectations that come along with your job. I can't add something else to it, right? Excuse number 3, we already do enough for families. That's kind of our big thing. Do we really need to be doing more? So I want to attack some of these excuses and really talk through some of the entry-level stuff, the low-hanging fruit of how we can get going with some family ministry strategies, some next-level stuff as well. And so let's start with this first excuse. We already tried, and it doesn't work. So usually when I hear that question, and you may have heard it in a variety of other scenarios, the question or the pushback I like to give is it possible that we didn't have the right resources or it wasn't the right time the last time you tried? Right? So for a lot of kids ministries, for example, when we say, hey, we already tried family ministry, what that translates is that we pass out stuff to parents all the time. When they come to pick up their kids, we give them stuff, we give them strategies, and they're obviously not using it. You know, for a lot of student ministries, you know, we have a parent newsletter. It goes out the first of every month. And look, we're trying here. Here's the thing. Let's look at the kids ministry piece first. So what happens when kids get picked up at Name the Church, it's probably something similar. They're holding something, little kids especially. For my kids, it's usually a coloring sheet of like a shepherd who's been scribbled in green or something like that. And you know, if you're a good parent, you go, wow, and in the back of your head, you know exactly where that thing is going, right? I'm not going to put that on my refrigerator. I have 1,000 other half-colored pictures that are laying around somewhere. So what some churches do is they say, hey, we need to give parents more stuff. Maybe you have like a brown paper bag, and so we stick the coloring sheet in there, the little craft for the day. Maybe there's a parent card, or maybe there's even a newsletter. And so what happens to this stuff? It ends up on the floor of the minivan. And then weeks later, when I'm cleaning out the minivan of styrofoam cups and old French fries, I come across an old bag of church stuff, and guess where it goes? Right in the trash. And you know, for e-newsletters, for student ministries, I've seen 100 of these things. They tend to be this cacophony of information. There's graphics and fonts, and there's 15 articles, and there's the calendar events, and this week we're meeting in room 142, and next week don't forget your money here. And it's like that gets clustered into the same inbox that the public school is sending you the information about this, and your cable company and your bills and whatever spam that you got, you know, signed up for. It's all in there. We say, hey, we're doing family ministry. So what I think has to really happen for just like an entry level way, like if you want to say, we just want to push the needle some, where do we start? For some people, we think the answer is if we could just get the lead pastor to announce it from the stage, that will solve everything. If this is your parent strategy, you are doomed to fail, okay? That may not happen. You might not have a lead pastor who's caught this exact same vision as you have and is really ready to talk about this from the stage. So you got to think of what is just a simple way we can start. And so one of the things that when I was working in the family ministry role in my church in Colorado, I saw all of the stuff that we were handing out in the kids ministry to parents. I thought, this is a waste of time and resources. Nobody's looking at this stuff. I'm watching them. Sometimes they're throwing it out before they even leave the church. They're using our trash cans to throw out the stuff we paid money to put in these bags. And so it was, okay, what if we did this? What if we were to boil this thing down to something ultra, ultra simple? What if we gave parents one thing? You would have thought I was pulling teeth. What I found in kids ministry is there's an emotional attachment to those coloring sheets. Some of you are kids ministry volunteers, kids ministry, school people. You tend to be hoarders. We have all of this paper and stuff, and I said, look, let's get it down to one thing. In fact, let's do this. What if we came up with just some goofy campaign? Let's call it the Drive Home Challenge. Just something corny like that. You come up with your own words. And this is what we did. I created this little card here that looked like this. One small card, little thing out of cardstock, and this is what it looked like. And I said, this is what I want us to do. This is the only thing you give to a parent at pickup. The only thing. And so you flip the card over, and on the reverse side, this is all it says. What can we learn from Esau about self-control? And there's the reference from the story for the morning. So we asked all of our age-specific ministries, and now I've only worked in larger churches, and so for those of you who are in smaller churches, I grew up in a church that was like 75 people in New Jersey, but I've only worked in larger churches, so a lot of these ideas we have to scale down. But for this particular thing, all of our different age groups who have different Bible stories said, what's one carefully crafted question that we can give to a parent that says, just ask this on the ride home. That way, if it ends up on the floor of the car, that's okay. What we're trying to do is just create one meaningful conversation between mom and dad with the child. And so for this particular question, what this actually does is it forces the child to think through the lesson. Okay, we learned about self-control this morning in Esau. What did Esau do? Oh, he traded his whole future for a bowl of soup. If we can just put mom and dad into this role where they're just kind of asking these questions, I feel like we can push the needle just a little bit. Now, at the student ministry level, the e-newsletter, I think it's not a bad idea, but email's a dying medium, as you know, and it's already clustered. And so for those of you who are involved in student ministry, the age designations are far less diverse than in kids ministry. You could probably have two databases, middle school and high school. A lot of you, that's all combined into one. Just use a simple texting service. You gather your parents' information, and what if they received a text message on their way out the door or pulling out of the parking lot of church? Maybe it just said something like this. Parents, ask this. What's the hardest part about being a Christian in school? Maybe that was kind of like the central question that got discussed at the student ministry that morning. And again, the idea is, oh man, we got to do this whole huge comprehensive strategy for our church. And what happens is we get so overwhelmed with trying to get going that we don't even start. So just pick a starting point. So maybe this is it. Maybe it's just a simple question that you could send out. Now, one of the problems with a newsletter or promotions, in many ways, even what student ministries do with social media, is just use it as a static means of communicating a message. But social media can be your friend because it possesses something unique. It possesses the ability to encourage two-way dialogue. So I would suggest, what if you reached out to parents on social media, not to just advertise to them to make sure you bring your deposit for the camp, but something different. So which social media should you use? My best recommendation is you go to Facebook. That's where all the parents are. You don't go to Snapchat. The parents aren't in Snapchat. They're starting to come over to Instagram, but they're in Facebook. That's their area. And so what if you did something like this, where you just simply had a post schedule where every single Sunday afternoon, every single Wednesday evening at a certain time, You sent out something like this. This says, parents, read this article and tell us in the comments below what mistakes you see parents make and share your wisdom with us. So simple article from WebMD, a secular source, 5 mistakes parents make with teens and tweens. That kind of article is what we call clickbait, 5 things. I can get down with 5 things. I could look at that real quick. But what you do is you ask parents to comment. What this communicates is we want to hear from you. We're not just telling you, we want to hear from you. And then the way that the Facebook algorithm actually works is it rewards engagement. So when you have people sharing an article or when you have people commenting, that's what actually gets in everybody's news feed. Instead of a static picture of a sun setting with a Bible verse, nobody's looking at that. That's not family ministry. Get them talking. Get them thinking. Hey, parents, tell us what is something that we can learn from you. This is the kind of thing that starts to encourage the dialogue. It starts to encourage getting the ball rolling in this kind of thing. And also, what it does is it also subtly helps parents to see what we talked about at youth group that night. It starts to help us to see some of those kinds of things. These are really, really simple ways that you could just get going in terms of communication. My encouragement to you is start small. Don't feel like you have to plan out the whole calendar. Pick one thing. In kids ministry, I would highly recommend pick one type of way that you can drive a parent towards a meaningful connection. Whether that's a drive time conversation, maybe that's a challenge to pray with your kid at night, maybe that's some kind of note that you put in their school bag in the morning. Whatever you do, pick one thing, keep it simple, and stick with that and set your goal that we just want to try to encourage some kind of meaningful connections between parent and student. Start there. That's the low-hanging fruit. Let's take a look at the second excuse. The second excuse is, we don't have the time. The ironic thing is this is the same excuse parents have when they say that I can't necessarily take on this role of spiritual leadership in my family. I don't have the time. We talked about this earlier. So as we looked at Deuteronomy 6 and these 4 different areas that Moses had identified that were already built into our schedule, I think from a ministerial standpoint, there is something that is so key that's already built into the schedule of anyone working with kids and youth. And that key is transitions. Transitions is the golden egg of family ministry. Here is why, because this is when you get people's attention. I think it was Rick Warren who once said that people are most tuned into God during tragedy and transition. Our eyes are opened a little bit more. And so there's all kinds of key transitions that are taking place in kids' lives. Most of these you can even begin with are age-based. So I would say for those of you who are in kids' ministry, the first thing you want to think through is, have you clearly communicated to families what the process is for how kids age into the next group? So for example, at what point do they move from the nursery into the toddler room, for example, if you have that kind of distinction? Is it on their birthday? Do you do it quarterly? Do you do it annually? That needs to be clear because, as you know, if a parent comes in one day and all of a sudden they're in a different room, that throws everybody off. It throws the kid off. It throws mom and dad off. It throws everybody off. Make sure you have that plan laid out. But then here are some of the key transitions depending on your church size. Let's start with this one. There's pre-K to K. So pre-K to kindergarten. For some of you, maybe that's combined. Maybe that's kindergarten to first. Whatever your age breakdown is, this is a really key transition. Another one would be when you move from elementary into middle school. A lot of churches, your elementary ends after 5th grade and it starts at 6th grade. Some people play around with the 6th grade piece. Whenever your elementary students move into middle school, you have opened up an opportunity for parent engagement and family ministry. Another huge one, middle school to high school. And then the last one would be high school to graduate. These are all open windows of opportunity for us. So let's talk about some of the strategies that we could do. Let's start with the pre-K through K. So you can go back one, please. So pre-K through K. Here's an example. So in the church that I was overseeing the teams that led our kids ministry, it was a larger church. So we had in the early childhood area about 200 kids just on the early childhood side of things. And so one of the challenges that we faced was this whole idea of moving kids from pre-K to kindergarten. Some of that is the way that the building I worked in was structured, that the pre-K room and the kindergarten room were in two totally different spaces. A lot of times, that is that move of when you're moving from one environment to the other is the transition that you want to focus on. So what we would find is that we kind of would just expect parents to know where to go. And it caused all of this stress, and we missed out on the fact that there was already some heartburn from moms and some dads. Oh, my kid's getting older. Oh my goodness, they're starting school now. They're not a baby anymore. All of those things are already on their hearts. But the other piece of it was, how does the system work? Where do I go? Where do I check in? And so we tried this. We had a larger room. Maybe you have an all-purpose room in your church. And so what we said was we're going to identify one day in the fall where all of the promotions take place. A lot of you do the same kind of thing. Call it Promotion Sunday, moving up, whatever you call it. So we had this day identified. Usually it was right around early to mid-August, coinciding with the start of the school season. So the Sunday before school started, we had this promotion event. We pumped it up as much as we could. And what we did was we told the parents, all of the parents of all of the kids in the early childhood, you just come to the one big room. That's it. That's what you need to know. Everybody just come to the big room. There was donuts in there. There's snacks, whatever. Had a couple of kids songs. I would recommend having chairs. You don't want kids just running all about. So we have chairs set up. If you don't have a space, maybe set up outside. And then what you do is you bring them in. You say, okay, parents, we know that this is a big change for you to move from pre-K to K. So this is what we're going to do. If you are the parent and you have your children who are going into kindergarten, we'd like for you to all stand up right now and head out that door with that person with the blue shirt, and they're going to take you. And so they'd walk this line of parents to the other side of the building into this room where the leaders were in there. All of the parents came in. We said, from here on out, this is the room where you're going to drop your kids off, and this is the room where you're going to pick them up. This is what the schedule looks like. And so what we were doing now was we were introducing parents into the new system, and we were doing it without the chaos of, oh my goodness, service is about to start, my kid's crying, we don't understand the newness of all of this. And okay, so they were late to worship service, but what else is new, right? And so then if you want to go next level, and you could be ready, that the leaders in the room have a little handout. Hey, we are starting this class this week for parents whose kids are starting school. Because we know that's a scary thing. It's just a 4-week thing. We want to encourage you, give you some challenges of how your kid can start off the year right and that kind of thing, and capitalize on that window of opportunity. Elementary to middle school. This is a huge, huge transition, right? So a lot of times, this particular transition is between two different teams in the church. Sometimes there's tension between those two teams. Student ministry staffs in church tend to be younger. Kids ministry staffs tend to be older, and that age breakdown by itself brings some tension. But the handoff from kids ministry to middle school ministry is a tricky one. But this is where parents are thinking, oh man, my kid's becoming a teenager. This is scary. This is an opportunity for us. And so one of the things that you can do for this particular deal, we did this one year at a church that I worked in. We rented out an indoor trampoline park. Now, what 12-year-old kid is not going to be excited about an indoor trampoline park? I realize not everybody has the resources and the funds to do that, but just some kind of fun event. This is what we did. We just paid for the tickets and said, you guys come, brought all these kids in, and they went to this indoor trampoline thing. They're all jumping around. And then when their parents dropped them off, we had the little birthday party room that you could reserve. And so we had all the parents come in, and for 30 minutes, we just talked about, hey, this is what to expect with middle school this year. And we did it outside of the hubbub of the church Sunday piece. Just bring the parents in. This is what they're going to do. They're going to be going in these small groups here. We're going to be talking about this kind of thing. We're going to be covering some of these kind of deals. Again, if you want to go next level, this is where you're ready. Hey, we're starting a small group for parents of middle schoolers, just a way for you to get to know some other middle schoolers. If you have your ducks in a row and you have your strategy laid out, that's a wonderful time to do that. And then this is where the middle school leaders are jumping around with these kids. They're building some relationships. And then, maybe that was on a Friday night, then that Sunday morning is when they were introduced into the middle school room. They already knew a few leaders. The parents already knew some people. And there was a breath that took place there. But the important thing was this bridge was built with the parents. That we said, we thought through this already. We know that this is bringing some anxiety in your life. And so we decided that we're going to take some time with this transition. Now, for all of us who are in ministry and churches, we know we're busy, but the transitions are happening with or without us. So let's leverage those transitions for ministry opportunities. Middle school to high school is another huge one. Remember, this is where parent engagement starts to really move in the wrong direction. So an opportunity here for a kid moving from middle school to high school, again, some smaller churches have that combined, but a lot of times for a lot of churches, these are two different ministries as well. One of the things that we've done in the past is we tell all the parents, on this promotion day, when everybody's promoting, we want you in the room. This is not a parents keep out kind of thing. We want you in the room. We bring them all in. Maybe it's a Wednesday night, a Sunday, whenever you do your big high school thing, you bring them all in. And we completely affirm the whole tension of teenagers not wanting their parents around. So you show YouTube videos of dads dancing at weddings, or spoof videos of stressed out moms. And we laugh about the fact that we say, okay, parents, you're not cool, but then we pump some encouragement into them. We help them to understand their influence. And we tell them that we are behind you. We understand how hard it is to parent a teenager. And guess who's listening? Every one of those teenagers in the room are hearing from the leadership that we think your parents are so vital and important. And they're hearing this too. They're hearing us talk about their parents' influence. And so this is an opportunity to not only just tell the parents that we are with you. In fact, we're here to support you, not the other way around. And the students are hearing it too. On the high school to graduate transition, this is a really big window of opportunity because when the parent engagement is going down, this is kind of the last spike. There's two levels of anxiety happening at this transition. On the part of the student, there's the anxiety of what happens next. Not only in just life, but even in the church. Because if you think about it, for a kid who's about to graduate, in the lifeblood of the church, almost every single step was laid out. For a kid who was born and raised in the church, I left the hospital and I went into the nursery of the church. Then I went to toddlers. Then eventually I went to third grade. And then what did I do after I got out of third grade? I went to the fourth grade class. And then I went to middle school. And then I went to high school. Well, a lot of churches don't have a college and young adults thing after high school. And so for a lot of these kids, it's like, I've never had to think about this stuff before. What's my next step? That anxiety is running on one vein, and then comes the parents. They have all kinds of anxieties of what's going to happen with my kid now. Are they going to stay at home? Are they going to get a job? I can't keep feeding this person unless they start contributing. They need to start paying their way here. For some of you who are thinking about kids who are going to college, will they get accepted? How will I afford this? What are they going to do for a major? All of these questions are already there. So one of the things that I would recommend is in January, you do an event that targets high school juniors and their parents. You call it something like Life After High School. And what you'll get is you'll get the parents of high school juniors, then you'll get all the parents of high school seniors who should have been thinking about this stuff, but they were dragging their feet, and you get the parents of high school sophomores who are the overachievers, and you can never be too prepared, right? But the reason I'd say January is because there's two times in the calendar year that are natural starting points. The fall, when school is starting, and January. We're thinking resolutions, it's the start of the year, that kind of thing. But also for the parent of a high school senior, when you do something in January, you're now in the year of graduation. It's not some far off event. And so in this thing, you just do something simple, cookies, coffee kind of thing. And we talk about, okay, for parents, these are some things to think about. Your kid is going to be potentially looking at college or life after that. This is an opportunity to lay out, this is our strategy of how we want your sons and daughters to get involved in the lifeblood of the church so they don't get lost. So there's an opportunity there. But for parents who are sending their kids away to college, we want to show you how to identify churches in the area, how to identify campus ministries in the area, because what do moms and dads do for kids who are going away to college? We figure out the campus, we figure out where to buy your books, we figure out the major, we figure out all of the good reputations of the school, the credentials of the professors, all of that kind of stuff, but we don't pay any attention to the churches or campus ministries in the area. You drop the 17, 18-year-old kid off at a campus and pull away, and we hope that they can somehow survive on their own? No. We have a window of opportunity to push the needle on this. And when? You got a transition that's coming up. And so another thing that we would do is have a special event for these high school kids, a send-off retreat. And so what I would do is I would say we'd pick sometime in August. We'd have this send-off retreat. If you don't have a lot of money, just do a special day thing. You can go camping. You can go do something at a park. You know, if you want to go all out, do like whitewater rafting, something like that. But what we would do is we'd say, okay, after this retreat, beginning this Sunday, you no longer come to the high school room. We don't need you hanging around the door. You know, am I still in? No, we're drawing a clear line. Okay, you no longer come. And then this is what we do: we get the parents to write letters to these kids. And in the letter, the parents are given some instructions of some very specific affirmations, have the parents write some dreams for their kids' life, a Bible verse. If these kids don't have parents who are engaged in their lives, then you get maybe a small group leader who is, or you do it. And this is a wonderful opportunity to create this connection to parents if they are willing and if they are there, and seeing that this transition is so key. These transitions are happening with or without us. So if you can take a step back and look at the overall calendar of what takes place from birth through graduation, you will find that there are all of these key opportunities. I want to show you something interesting that a ministry practitioner who was a family pastor in Northeast Pennsylvania did. He called this his family map. I think this is fascinating. You can take a look at this. Next slide, please. So look at what he developed. He developed this idea of this road that goes all the way from birth to graduation. And so I'm going to see if I can come over here without the microphone feeding back. And so if you look up here, this is where the child is born. And so what they did was they said, we're going to have different classes or different special events around these key areas. So with a baby, they had a special class about how life is different when a baby enters the picture. That's also a time where they started talking about child dedication, getting parents to think about what it means to raise your child with Christ at the center. And then as they moved along, there's stuff about when they turn 2, moving in through middle school, high school, all the way down to graduation. What do we do next? So again, what this guy basically did was he saw all of the opportunities that come for the entire age range and said, this is what we're going to do with our ministry. This is it. This is family ministry. And he began killing every single special event and retreat and parent class, all of that stuff that did not fit inside this family map. This is an example of a comprehensive family strategy, NextGen strategy. So it's a little bit hard to see, but I want you to see the 7 areas that they broke them down because it's really creative. Here's the first one. It's the baby. That was the first one, the baby. And so they understood that when moms and dads first have a child, eyes are wide open, right? They're not just the bundle of joy everybody told you they were going to be. Nobody prepared you for the sleepless nights. Nobody prepared you for the kid who won't stop crying, or how you feel like you're never going to be able to, go to a public event ever again, a church, a restaurant, whatever. What they saw, there's an opportunity here. What we could say to parents is, we know this is hard and we know you're thinking about it. This is a major transition in life. Let us help you. So the second thing they did, they had the baby, then there was the noise. This is for every parent who's feeling overwhelmed, for every parent who's feeling like, I should be better. My house should be cleaner. I should be more organized. I shouldn't be stressed out, snapping at everybody all the time. Opportunity. We want to come alongside and help pump some encouragement into you that you're not alone. Here's a mentor mom. Here's a dad who's been a little bit further down the road. We want to start connecting you guys together and help somebody encourage you along the way. Number 3, the bus. The day that the kids start school. You know, when moms and dads are dabbing the little tears out of their eyes as that little one with their lunchbox walks off and they start having visions of the age of 18 when they're pulling out of the driveway for the last time and the whole story is unfolding before their very eyes. And those of you who have grown kids, you can go back there in a second and you can remember that, can't you? There's an opportunity. What if we as a church said, okay, if this is already on the minds of moms and dads, what if we slid in there and we had a class, a group, some kind of resources to help your kid thrive? Number 4, the talk. Another way to say this, the birds and the bees. You want to increase parent engagement? Develop some kind of curriculum or go out there and find resources on how to help parents talk to their kids about sex. I got to tell you the story. I was asked by a company who was putting something together if I would proof their early manuscript for, it was this very thing, it was a book for parents about sex. It had diagrams of the anatomy, all of this kind of stuff, and it said, okay, here's week 1's lesson, here's week 2's lesson. So I'm like, okay, I've got a child at home. I think at the time he was 7. And so I'm looking at the research and realizing that age 11 seems to be what all the research points to is when kids have their first exposure to pornography. So when's the right time to talk with a kid about sex? So my kid's 7. I'm like, I don't know if I want to introduce these ideas into his head and all of this kind of stuff. And then I had to stop and realize I'm the one who's shameful about it. For him, he doesn't understand this. I want it to come from his dad. So I bring this material home that I'm proofing, and I'm going through lesson 1. And this 7-year-old starts asking questions that are in lesson 5. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I was not ready for lesson 5. I only prepared lesson 1. So I'm pulling out the anatomy things. And for him, it's not shameful. He's interested in how it all works. And so I'm feeling like some middle school health teacher, pointing to the things, and I'm needing to reference because I'm not even sure all that stuff that's in there. And I'm walking him through this thing, and he's fascinated, and he's going through it. Listen to this. The next week, my wife comes out on the porch. She's playing with a neighbor kid, and he talks about meeting hot girls at a movie theater. I'm like, what are you talking about? Where you hear this? Well, it was the kid he was playing with on the porch. And then my son makes this motion with his hands that's a sexual gesture. Where did he learn this? He learned it from the neighbor's kid. Guess what? It didn't happen in some big, bad public school. It happened on my porch. But guess what? I got there first. We already talked to him about sex. It was the neighbor kid who came in second. His mom and dad already talked with him about it. And so we were able that night, hey, remember when we started talking about this kind of thing and we started, all of this and remember where babies come from? And he said, yeah. And I'm like, okay, well, where? And he said, well, it's when a mom and dad and their wieners touch together. I'm like, oh, okay, we got some work to do. But you know what I mean. He couldn't remember all the illustrations. It's stuff for a 7-year-old, But listen, you want to talk about a window of opportunity for engagement? All these parents who are shameful and fearful, boom, right there. For many of them, they're coming to that talk way too late. Opportunities, there's the talk. Then the dance. This is for the kid going into middle school. Anyone remember how hard a middle school dance was? Take middle school, which is hard enough, and then make it middle school dance. It's the single hardest thing a 12-year-old has ever done in their entire life, ever, right? So this is an opportunity. This is the kid going into middle school. Here are some things that you have to think about. This is how their bodies are changing. This is the kinds of things that they're going to want to do. Then they moved it to number 6, the keys. Everything changes when a kid gets a driver's license. Everything changes. In fact, dating in our American culture is only like less than 100 years old. It used to not be that way. People didn't used to date. They used to court. They used to have, much more closer to what we see out of the Eastern world where families would set these things up. What changed? People started driving. Automobiles. Kids started having more independence, the ability to go to other places. So they saw this as an opportunity with 16-year-olds who are getting their driver's license. If parents are already feeling some anxiety of what's this going to look like and late nights and helping them think through boundaries and ways that you can help a kid. And then number 7, the choice. This would be the child who's getting ready to transition from high school into graduation and whatever that life looks like after that. Is it a job? Is it college? Whatever. What this person did was structured their entire ministry around transitions. So there's the age-based transitions, which are just, moving from elementary to middle school, middle school to high school. But then there's these life transitions that are so key. And then there's also spiritual milestones mixed in there. Child dedication, baptism, communion, those kinds of things, making decisions to follow Christ for the first time, all of these wonderful spiritual milestones. Here's the thing about transitions. They're also an open opportunity for outreach. Because remember, most parents want to be better parents, whether they believe in Jesus or not. And so if you really want to take this thing next level, what you think through is, what are the anxieties that every parent is facing, not just Christian parents? So for example, one of these things, if people are feeling anxiety over my kid starting school, what would it look like for you to put together an event for parents to help them understand their children's development? I was in a breakout session earlier, and Ann Orge passed out this resource here, provided by Lifeway, that is talking about how to talk to kids about different spiritual things. But on the inside of this is a little flap that opens up that just simply talks about some of the developmental pieces of kids at certain ages. You could just teach that. Give them to parents, and you could structure it in a way, and I've done an event like this before, where you do it in the fall, because why? That's when everybody's thinking about school. And what we actually did was we invited parents of every age between birth through high school, and what we said was, we have some resources that we think can help you to be better parents. Invite your neighbors, invite your friends. Again, you want to go next level? Do it off-site, and think through the processes of how you can get a person pulled into the ministries of the church and introduce them to Christ and start moving that way. But what we did is there's also resources from a website called justaphase.com, phase, P-H-A-S-E, justaphase.com, and it's just research on child development. And the way that we marketed this to parents was we said, listen, for most parents, what happens is you have this sweet little 4-year-old and they tell you they love you and they cuddle up to you and they give you kisses, and then they turn 5 and suddenly they're crossing their arms and talking back. What happened? Did my kid become possessed by an impure spirit? What's going on here? No, what happens is the kid is changing. He or she is developing their own voice. And what happens with so many of us as parents is we react to the change. But what if we can get an advanced view of where the kid is heading developmentally? There's been people who've done the research already. All we're doing is just sharing resources. But what the message that we communicate is, parents, as a church, as a ministry, we can help you. Schools do this all the time. They say, we can help you. We can help your kid get smarter. After school programs and places like the YMCA, they do this. Why not the church? Why not Christian ministries? To say that we're not just a place that you drop your kids off. We're actually a place that can help you be a better parent. And then start telling them about Christ. Start introducing them to that you can actually have a relationship with this Jesus. And this can affect the way that you parent. Don't you want a kid growing up in a world who's got some hope and assurance of eternity? I mean, the opportunities are endless. So most of these things were developed by somebody who is a family pastor. And now some of you have heard that title thrown around. Churches are now starting to hire this particular role. It comes in a variety of different titles. There's family ministry pastor, family life pastor, NextGen pastor. And not every church has the resources to hire this, but this is what I believe should be the primary function of a family pastor. If you're thinking of restructuring ministry or something like that, I believe this should be the function. That the family pastor has got to be the guardians of the family ministry strategy and implementation. They have to be the guardians of the family ministry strategy and implementation. This is what I mean by that. For smaller churches who hire this particular role, what they basically are saying is we need you to do kids ministry, student ministry, and college ministry. Larger churches often hire this role as more of a department head. We want you to oversee kids and youth. And in both of those situations, this is what's going to happen. This particular person, like a tractor beam, will get sucked into kids ministry. It will make you another kids ministry person. Why? Because kids ministry is resource heavy. There's all of the supplies, there's all of the crafts, and then there's tons of volunteers. When I was a family pastor, I had to fight for this, but I was a little bit more on the ground, a little bit more like a department head type. And on the weekends, we'd have radios and to communicate to one another. And I remember one particular weekend, Pastor Steve, what is your location? I'm like, oh, this sounds scary. Is there like an active shooter in the building or something? I'm in the main lobby. What's going on? We're all out of glitter. Okay. I'm like, all those years of seminary. It's like seminary's never taught me about glitter, But when I got that call, I'm not trying to be somebody better than somebody else, but if I can uniquely offer something to a ministry, I don't want to get sucked down into the weeds. This person has got to have a higher leadership altitude to be able to see that map, like I showed you, that family map of where kids are going all the way through the ministry. And what happens is you get sucked in, or the other piece is that as soon as there's a problem, you become the interim leader. I had this happen too. I had a high school pastor who I hired, and then a few months later we had to fire because he got arrested at the church. Another story for another time. So guess who becomes the interim youth pastor? The guy who left student ministry. If I wanted to stay in student ministry, I wouldn't have left student ministry. It's like the mafia. They suck me back in, And so now what happens when you get pulled into the kids ministry on the ground, we're helping with supplies and all of the different drama that goes on with volunteers. I get sucked into youth ministry, and suddenly it's all about, helping them think through the retreats and the curriculum and all of this kind of stuff. What's the first thing to go? The strategy. The strategy goes away. And so what I think for the family pastor, what they absolutely have to do is they have to be this guardian. So I think that the kind of person that I think is ideal in this role is a ministry strategist. They've got to have strategy somewhere in their DNA. It's not just that they're a nice kid. It's not that they love kids or that they have to have some strategy. I think this is a great job for somebody who's thinking through what does life after student ministry look like. I think this is a great job for some maybe more seasoned church ministry staff. There are certain jobs within the church that have an age cap on them: worship leader and student ministry pastor. They just do. There comes a point in time where your age starts to work against you. I think for this particular role, older, more seasoned people can work because a lot of them have seen it. You've watched the kid walk the whole path. Incidentally, this is also a great job position for women in the church. Some of the best family pastors and directors that I've ever known were women. Why? They get moms. They understand where moms are and what they're feeling, and we know that moms typically drive the family. There was a time yesteryear when it was the dad who was gathering the whole family and bringing them all to church, and I think in certain ethnic pockets that is still holding true, but for I think a lot of the American culture, it's the mom dragging everybody, dragging the dad away from NFL pregame, dragging the kids. It's the mom who's driving this. And so a lot of times it's women are killer in this kind of role because they get all of those anxieties, all of those transitions. And so I think they have to possess some level of strategy. And I'll give you an example. So when I held this title, when I wasn't being pulled into the supply closet and the middle school all-nighter and all of these things, when I was really fighting for it, I had to help drive some systemic change at the church level. So for me, this role was in my particular church was at the kind of the executive leadership level. And so we had this window of time in our church's calendar. It was about a 4-week period from mid-January to mid-February where there was so much activity going on, and it was taxing our resources and everything. So here's the activity. There's a marriage seminar, there's a middle school retreat, there was a high school retreat, and then there was this special event for kids ministries, like 4th and 5th graders. And it was all kind of on different weekends, and there's always something happening. And the reason was these 4 different events were being driven by 4 different ministry people in the church. And their rationale was, here's an open weekend, I'm going to snag this. Here's MLK weekend. They have Monday off from school. Let's do a retreat here. Here's President's Weekend in February. Monday off from school. Let's do a retreat here. And so all of this activity, and what happened for all of these events, they were marginally attended, and everybody was burnt out at the end. And so in my role, I said, okay, let's do this. Next year, let's have a calendar meeting before we set the budget. And so we lay out the calendar, and we have everybody make their requests. Okay, these are not, you don't get them. This is just your request. And this is what the suggestion came out of it. When we looked at that same 4-week window of mid-January to mid-February, I just simply threw this question out. What if we did all 4 of those events on the exact same weekend? They all looked at me like I was 9 kinds of crazy. I said, but hear me out. Let's do this. What if instead of having the middle school take a retreat on this weekend and the high school take a retreat on this weekend, what if they go to the same exact venue on the same exact weekend? You can either combine for teaching and worship, or you can figure out some kind of rotational deal within the facilities. Maybe this group over here is teaching and worship, this group is playing activities, and then they switch, whatever. This would simplify it for parents. You have 1 weekend to remember, 1 set of registrations, 1 place, 1 drop-off, 1 pickup. 4th and 5th grade event, same night. Marriage seminar, same night. So walk with me through this. Mom and dad come in, and if they've got a 4th grader, they drop the kid off at the 4th and 5th grade event. If they've got a 6th grader, they drop him off at the middle school retreat drop-off. If they have a 10th grade daughter, they drop her off at the high school retreat, and then they walk over to the marriage seminar, which perfectly coincides with the ending of the 4th and 5th grade event. We bill the whole thing as a family weekend. And that way, we're all working together, and what happens? Attendance spikes up. And then this is where the fun part gets. We then ask the question, well, when do parents gather? Well, they all have to come back to pick up their kids after the retreat. So what if instead of saying, you get here at 6 o'clock to pick up the kids, what if we ask them all to get here at 5 o'clock? And what we do is we ask the youth pastor who's at the retreat to leave an hour early. They don't need to oversee kids jamming sleeping bags into 15-passenger vans. They can leave early. They won't argue, trust me. They can leave early, and what they do is they come back, and at 5 o'clock, they have handouts ready for the parents. They say, this is what we talked about at the retreat. These are the kinds of things that came up. Let's have some dialogue about it, and here are some great talking points for when your kids pull in and when you're helping them process the weekend, the retreat, the mission trip, or whatever, and then, oh, look at that, here they all come, rolling in. All right, parents, let's pray and go get your kids and go do some ministry. You see, when you have this kind of strategy, when you have a person who's guarding it, for anyone who's got that excuse of, I don't have the time, that's a good excuse, actually, because churches and ministries are notorious for chasing after so many things. But if you have one person who's saying, my job is to make sure I'm thinking through this, and I'm holding everyone accountable to this, I'm holding the student ministry accountable to how are we engaging parents with the annual curriculum. Kids ministry, are we handing a bunch of junk at the door, or do we have something that's going to push the needle on parent engagement? This person has to hold the line. And sometimes you may need to restructure a staff around this very thing to get your strategy. And so when I was a family pastor, one of the things that we did is we had a 4-word mission statement, and I had to drive this over and over again. Here was the 4-word mission statement. It was simply this: help parents lead kids. So we'd have meetings, we'd go over this all the time. And this statement is 3-dimensional. Here's the first part: help parents. This is what we would say to our team all the time. We want to help parents. So where do parents need the most help? What's on their mind? Where are the windows of opportunity? What's the transitions? What are the conversations you're having? Well, we don't know what goes on. Can we create an event where a parent goes into the home of the high school small group that's meeting in a home, and they meet the small group leader and they exchange information so that they can have regular contact, that they could partner together in the discipleship of their kids. Let's talk about this. How can we help parents? The second part of the statement is lead kids. So we know that we've got about 40 to 100 hours of influence a year. Let's nail it. What can we do to really make sure we're leading kids? Is this curriculum sound? Is it simple? Are kids getting it? Do volunteers have to read through a packet of 65 pages to find out what it is that they're supposed to teach a kid on a Sunday morning? Let's do this. This retreat, what are we trying to accomplish? What's the win? We want to lead kids. But then what's our goal? We want to help parents lead kids. That's the third dimension. We want to put them in the role of the spiritual leader. So how can we push the needle on this? How can we create meaningful connections? How can we put them in a place where they're having conversations? What tools can we put in their hands that can help them lead? If we have a newsletter, what can this newsletter do that would foster connection between a child and a student? All of those things. I remember when I was in high school, our church tried something like this. Again, I went to this little church in New Jersey, and they said, okay, we all want all of you families for Advent, we want you to go through this devotional series. So we came home from church that day, and we sat around the table, and my dad pulls out the thing, and he's reading it word for word, and it was the most awkward thing in the world. Why? Because we've never done anything like that before. It was weird. I've never even seen my dad try to take some kind of spiritual role. But as I look back on that, I'm like, you know what? That was kind of cool. He was trying. And all of us were sitting around like, oh, this is icky. This is weird. Why are we talking about this kind of stuff? But what the church did was they thought through, we're going to challenge you families to do this 4-week thing. They gave us a bite-sized challenge. They gave us a tool. They put it in our hand. And even my dad, who had no spiritual influence on my life at all, was reading through the Advent devotional with us around a table. And I look back on this little church of 50 people or so in New Jersey that barely did anything. But I think that was a win, because they tried something and it was doable. And they tried to push the needle. I think that's what we have to live. We have to think, how can we set parents up for this level of success? So when you have that excuse, I just don't have time, understand we have these windows of opportunity already built in. Yeah, it's going to take some time to think through how to leverage them, but this is where the money's at. And then here's the last excuse. This is actually the scariest of all of them, that we do enough for families. The reason this is the scariest of all of them is as soon as you say this, you have admitted we no longer have to try anymore. This will get you faster to status quo more than anything. Once you say that you stop trying, you're done. But remember the stakes. Remember Psalm 145. One generation shall commend your works to another. They shall declare your mighty acts. Our greatest probability of faith transfer to kids from their parents is if we can get behind these moms and dads and help them. And if we could, by God's power, change futures. So let's get behind parents and let's get to work. Amen? Amen. Let me pray for us. Lord God, I pray that no one would walk out of here feeling overwhelmed, feeling like they need to take on the world. But God, I pray that you would help these men and women care enough to just push the needle a little bit, get a little momentum, get a little progress. Lord, I pray for great insight into opportunities that are available. Lord, I pray that they would look at their calendars and look at the kinds of things that are going on and assess if this is really even helpful. God, I pray for kids ministries who are in this endless loop of doing the same thing over and over again and jamming papers and never really asking the question to parents. Lord, I pray that today you'd help them to think through that a little bit. For student ministries that have created churches within a church and are doing their own little siloed thing, Lord, I pray that you would help them to think beyond, Lord, of how they can extend their ministry into the homes. Lord, I pray for the unbelieving families in our areas. God, I pray that you would give us insight into finding out what kinds of things they're thinking about and seeing as how we as churches and ministries can help them. And Lord, help us to leverage these opportunities to introduce them to Jesus and affect an entire generation. Lord God, we need you. Ministry is hard, but Lord, help us to do it better. It's too important to not do it better. Father, we ask all of these things in the power of your Spirit in Jesus' name. Everybody prays. Amen. Amen.